yeah, we've got a guest. Tim is back. He's been on one other one.
Which is shocking.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It's still to this day, and I don't mean any offense to any of our other guests, but it's still my favorite episode of all time.
It's my favorite too.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That's so vain.
but we're so happy to have you back on. Thanks for joining us. The subject that we wanted to kind of hit on with Tim here, I think he'd be good on this subject. And
you want me to kind of unwrap it a little bit?
Yeah, go for it. I would love that.
Thinking about some topics that have been, I guess, present in our minds lately, one of them was leadership. Jeff's taught a couple of sermons recently out of 2 Corinthians chapter 10.
Yes.
This idea of Paul coming to the church in Corinth and making a defense for his leadership and kind of setting in principles for us to aspire towards when it comes to being leaders. And my jobs are inherently overtly about leadership. Mm-hmm. You know, one of my jobs, I came from the base today, so I'm wearing the monkey suit. But so I fly airplanes for the Air Force and I fly airplanes for an airline, right? So but really, what are they paying me to do? I mean, yeah, they're paying me to take off and land safely, but that's not the bulk of the reason that they're willing to pay me money.
Right.
They're paying me to be a leader and make good decisions, whether it's respective to aircraft systems or whether it's talking about people in general, right? And the question, I think, that is something that a lot of men are wrestling with or going to wrestle with, should wrestle with, is as they begin their jobs, as they begin their careers, how are they going to exert leadership on the people around them? And do they realize that they are, whether they like it or not?
Yeah.
So the day one that you walk into a new job, and I don't care if you're an intern. We have a good friend. He's a seminarian right now who had to intern before they would actually hire him as an architect.
Yeah.
And I wonder if people realize that even as an unpaid intern, you exert influence and leadership on the people around you.
Yeah, that's good.
In a lot of respects, leadership can lead to influence in the terms of being an evangelist, a witness.
Yeah.
And we ought to aspire to lead people well for multiple purposes. One might be that you would be able to be an example of Christ, but another one might be that you would be able to put yourself in a position of credibility to where they would listen to your witness.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of other good biblical reasons to do it. The interesting thing about it is that I think a lot of guys, we're hearing this more and more, a lot of guys in our culture are so neutered in terms of masculinity that they don't even begin to imagine that they could be leaders. Mm-hmm. They have found themselves so emasculated by our culture at large that they don't understand that they have the opportunity and obligation to lead the people around them.
That's an interesting concept. And while you were starting off there, I was thinking to myself, I'm glad my toes are under this desk because they might be getting stepped on here.
Yeah.
But
it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's a topic on my mind for two reasons. I have a couple of recent examples that are really interesting, but I have some older examples that I'll give first because for most of my career, I would tell you that I have been a very poor leader. I wasn't even a follower of Christ for the vast bulk of my military career. But I have always found myself to be remarkably insecure and immature. Yeah. And because of that, my form of leadership was the wrong one. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the 3 pillars of Pauline leadership that we see in 2 Corinthians, not at all. So I remember being a captain, which is, 03. It's you've got second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain. Junior officer, okay? But there are still, theoretically, as a captain, some officers that are even more junior to you. I was at Dyess Air Force Base in probably 2013, something like that, maybe 2012, and I was in charge of the scheduling shop. I had to assign pilots to airplanes and get those airplanes flying on a weekly basis. That was my job.
Yes.
And I also, as an ancillary job, ran the duty desk, which is this desk similar to where Matt's sitting right now, and a lieutenant would important. I don't know. It was manned by a lieutenant, so not that important. But every lieutenant who in a flying squadron has had to sit duty dog. Is what we call it, duty dog. Yeah. And they sit at the desk and they basically go get coffee for someone, or they'll print the flight plans, they'll print the weather, et cetera. There's not that much to do, but someone needs to be there. They're kind of the the step desk before guys go out to their airplanes. Okay, they might be a little bit of the person who's the gopher, if you know what I mean by that. But it's a necessary job, and the job started early so that you could be there to help air crews as they were coming in to fly that day. And we had a couple of lieutenants that were notoriously. We had lieutenants at large are notoriously late. They just they're young. They don't know what they're doing. They show up when they feel like it, So you have to like train them to like. And I did the same thing as a lieutenant. I was the worst. So I don't know why I found it was my mission. And technically, I was supervising these guys. And I remember 2 guys were late one day, and it had been happening. And these 2 particular guys, I get them in the hallway. They show up an hour late, and dude, I just let them have it in the middle of the squadron in front of everyone, including all of our enlisted air crew. I'm all junior guys in the squadron, and I'm just ripping these guys a new one. And I got to tell you, I really dressed them down pretty good. And they were never late again. But I'll tell you this, too. I learned something really quickly that day. I lost my opportunity for actual leadership over those guys. Yeah. At that point, and from that point on, the only thing I ever had over those 2 guys was positional leadership. Yeah. If they saw me in the parking lot, they would salute me because they had to. Not because they respected me or the rank.
Right.
So that was an example of me doing leadership the wrong way. I could have found an opportunity to, one, ask them why they were late, figure out what was going on. I could have brought them into another space and given them the talking rather than embarrassing them in front of a whole bunch of people that were junior to them. And the reason I did it? Because it made me feel good. It made me feel like the big guy. That was a terrible example of leadership. And that was by far the model of leadership that I sort of followed for the first decade of my career.
Yeah.
I think if we were to look out there and say, guys starting their new careers, guys that are in careers that are hoping to advance themselves in careers, the one thing that I would tell them is practice Christ-like leadership. If you do this, 1, it's more work.
Yeah.
2, you have to be clever. You cannot just go off raw emotion. You can't go off the first inclination you have in dealing with a person in your job is probably the wrong one if you're a guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Your first inclination is going to be to go and especially if you're in a position of authority, to yell at people, to dress them down, to embarrass them, to try to, we used to say, if you could do scorn, ridicule, and rebuke, like that was the method of training in the Air Force for the longest time, right? So, and I think what we've found is that it's not that I think you need to be a softer, or more gentle person in the sense of effeminate. Right. I think it is that a confident leader, the man that I ended up really respecting in my military career especially, they could really make you do things. They could get to you and compel you to do your job well, but they didn't do it by yelling at you.
Yeah.
They did it in another way. They set an example and they served to the point that you didn't want to let them down.
That's right.
Man, I had some great leaders in the Air Force. I had a guy named Mike Brock at Dyess Air Force Base, and he was a squadron commander there, and we went on a 7-month deployment to Afghanistan. That was a long one for us as a unit. That was the longest time. That was the longest single stretch I ever spent away from my wife. And normally our deployments up until that point with our AEF rotations had been 2 months or 4-month rotations over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And some guy got a promotion for suggesting that the C-130 units could go, why don't we send them on 6 and 7-month deployments instead? And someone out there was like, that sounds great. And then they sent us, and we were like, this really stinks. It was bad. I mean, in the sense that it was a long time away from your family.
Right.
However, I will tell you this was the best deployment I ever had, even though it was the longest one. And the reason was because of my leader.
Yeah.
Mike Brock and his DO, Joe Frampton, those guys were like heroes to me. And what was interesting about those guys was Mike was one of the quietest guys you've ever met, but he would go to bat for his people.
Yeah.
And if you ever walked into Mike's office, he had these Coke rim, glasses that sat on the end of his nose. And you'd walk into his office, and he was always reading something. I don't know. I don't know if that was just he would instantly pick up a piece of paper when he walked into his office or what.
Right. But I've never read it.
They were always pulling
his feet down.
And so you'd come in with a problem, and he'd be like, "Hey, sir, I've got this issue," and and he would always look at you over his glasses this, and then you'd find yourself going. And then the crazy thing about Mike, he's pretty smart. he already kind of knew the answer to your problem, but he would never just tell you. He'd be like, well, did you think about this? And you'd be like, oh, no, I didn't think about that. But you didn't want to let this guy down. He was like the dude, right? I mean, he was this guy who he always took one for the team when it came to covering for us in front of like higher ups and stuff like that. Mike was one of those interesting people that never, it seemed, cared that much about whether or not he got promoted.
Yeah.
He wanted his squadron to succeed.
Yeah.
A lot more than he wanted to pin on a new rank.
Yeah.
And wow, what a guy. We followed him on that deployment, and it was the best deployment I ever had.
That's interesting.
Because any one of us would have gone another 7 months for Mike.
Yeah.
How remarkable is that? That's a different kind of leader.
That's a different kind of leader, for sure. For some reason, I'm thinking even like I'm thinking about other instances. Like you're a military setting, and I think about football coaches and stuff like that. You see kind of the same thing. Yeah. You'll see guys, and look, there are coaches that yell at their players that do get some results, but they don't have any respect for the man at all. But you can tell the players that'll play for their coach.
That's right.
And look, I'm an LSU fan. We just had a coach that lost the team, and they just stopped playing for him.
Right.
Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not saying that.
We just had a team that lost coach. There you go.
Yeah.
Same thing.
All that being said, that's an interesting concept because I'm thinking in my workplace.
Yes,
okay?
and that's what I want us to do. Let's extrapolate this beyond military and flying and stuff. It's like when we think about the folks that would be listening to this on a day in and day out basis, I hope that they stop and consider, like, even if they drive a truck, they may think, I'm solo player 80% of the time. No, you're not. The way you do your job is a form of leadership. You can always lead yourself. But even more than that, you are going to interact with people at some point in your day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you like it or not, John Maxwell wrote a book a while back called 360-Degree Leadership. You can take or leave some of John's stuff, but in general, I think probably there's very few people out there that have studied leadership as much as him.
Yeah.
And one of the concepts that he built in that I really agree with is this idea that you always, whether you like it or not, exert leadership in a 360-degree pattern. That is, you exert leadership on the person who is technically your leader. You obviously lead the people below you, and you have lateral forms of leadership. And we see this biblically with Paul.
Well,
Christ.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's what I was thinking through is like, okay, in my line of work, which I am a truck driver right now, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think that what's interesting is I'm thinking, okay, how does leadership happen? And I think you're right, and I never thought of it in terms of, it's a really interesting concept, honestly, is you're thinking about leadership there, and you're thinking about just the guys above you and down.
Yep.
But that's not true, because I was thinking about when I've been convicted about talking to another fellow worker on the phone, and I lead them down a complaining pattern.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're leading
work.
Yeah.
And I'm the one leading that conversation. I don't even purposely get there.
Yep.
And that's what I'm thinking about right now. It's like, oh man, no, that's leadership. I may probably guided that conversation, whereas I could have been guiding them the opposite way.
I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
Another form of lateral leadership, if you will. The guy who really shared the gospel with me and in a dedicated, intentional sense, encouraged me to read my Bible for myself. He was just another pilot like me. He was a friend. He was not in a position of leadership over me or under me whatsoever. He was a complete lateral in my squadron. He's just a buddy. We were both majors at the time.
Right.
And you have to understand, it was his leadership that caused me to want to read my Bible, because he knew things, he understood things, he had wisdom, and he had the fruit on the tree that I didn't have. And all those things were leadership, but it was lateral leadership. It was kind of a Paul and Barnabas sort of thing, right? I mean, it wasn't like he was in some forms of spiritual leadership. Yeah, he was discipling me at the point that I came to know the word. But I'll tell you this, in the military sense, he wasn't in a leadership position over me at all, but he was definitely leading me.
Yeah.
And I'm eternally thankful for that he did that. He took his role super seriously. Guys have an opportunity in their workplaces to lead. We call it leading someone to Christ.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is the idea that there is a form of leadership, a brand of leadership that ought to be practiced in a day in and day out basis, and a lot of guys, because they assume incorrectly that they're not in a form of leadership, they don't practice leadership. And the other thing that I think goes hand in hand with this, and this is the part that's super convicting to me, is that, like Jeff said in his sermon on Sunday, leadership is almost always going to start with your own personal disciplines.
Yeah.
We know this inherently. We see war movies about generals who, wake up breathing excellence and stuff like that, right? I mean, we see like you've seen Greyhound with Tom Hanks?
Yes.
Such a good war movie.
Yeah, that's good.
He is a great leader in that movie. And you see him exerting leadership in a very calm but directive way, and people respect him immensely, right? But you also get the general sense, because of the way the movie portrays him, that he's a very disciplined man. And in all circumstances, if you find a good leader, you will find a disciplined man.
Yeah.
The challenge is, I'm not talking about going to the gym necessarily, although that is a part of it. Pete Hegseth right now is the leader of our military, right?
Right. Yeah.
Dude's kind of a beast. He's a hoss, right?
Yeah.
He's going out and doing the training with his dudes. He's exerting leadership over them, but he's showing them that he can lead by from the front, right? He's in there doing the PT. Yeah, by example.
Yeah.
But what is the spiritual form of leadership by example? It's the spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
And I think in that respect, you cultivate the spiritual disciplines by repetition and intention. And so if you want to be a good leader in your workplace, a lot of that begins in the prayer closet. It begins with some of the simple spiritual disciplines. The common means of grace produce good leadership in men.
I think, I'm thinking about just simple things like bridling your tongue.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about biblical intake. Now I'm really convicted.
It's like, how do you bridle your tongue? I mean, the Word of God says that no man can do it.
Yeah.
It takes the Holy Spirit.
It's
like, again, you got to pray for that.
That's right.
You got to ask and you got to seek it, and you have to, for sure. Something that I wanted to just kind of throw out there, and I'm not trying to offset the conversation.
No, go for it.
We still need to go in that direction. But just really quick, I know that there's a lot of guys probably listening that are like, you don't know my job. I honestly don't have any leadership. But let me say, if
I
you
say
ever,
hogwash.
I do too, because tell me if you agree with this. If you have influence anywhere on anyone's life, if you have any kind of influence, negative, positive, you have leadership there.
Yep.
Because influence is a form of leadership. Do you agree with that?
Let me tell you a story from the Air Force Academy, circa 1979. My dad was there. So he graduated in 79. This happened sometime that he was there. At least I heard the story. In the 12th Squadron, which is the squadron I ended up in, there was this old man who was a janitor. All the cadets kind of just didn't pay much attention to him. This is the guy who cleaned the floors, cleaned the bathrooms, and took out the trash and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was a wallflower. He was the kind of guy that you just passed by and didn't even realize he was there, right? And this is back in the days before cell phones and Google and stuff, so finding out someone's background was not necessarily that easy back then. And the story goes that at some point, one of the cadets realized this guy had been there for a long time and asked him his story, and the guy had mentioned that he had served, but didn't say anything more than that. And the kid had a trip to D.C., and he went into the National Archives on his own time and pulled the information on this guy and found out that he was a Medal of Honor winner.
Wow.
And he had served so faithfully, and that he wanted to continue serving. He had gone to the Air Force Academy because he just wanted to continue serving that next generation. He was the janitor of 12th Squadron. And here's the thing. When the cadets found that out, you have no idea the amount of honor that guy received. He became a hero to them.
Yeah.
A mentor to many. But he was a humble man, a very quiet man. He served, and you would think that man had no influence. He did. There's always a place for a person to have influence. It is without exception. I don't care if you're the person who's cooking the fries at McDonald's. I don't care if you're the guy that is digging ditches.
Yeah.
If you're on construction crew, if you drive a truck, think about some of the other jobs that are out there. An electrician, a plumber, well, those are easy. You're around people.
Yeah.
You definitely have leadership. If you work from home, doing online things exclusively and have very little connection with other people, you still work for someone, and you're still delivering a product to someone else. And you have leadership in the way you do your job and the way you interact. There is, And of course, this extends immediately and most importantly to our families. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I say even just in the workplace.
Yeah.
No,
They don't understand how God might use
Yeah.
them. That God might use them. This is the crazy thing. Do you know some of the evangelistic conversations that have popped up in the course of me flying in the airlines were not with the people that I was working with that day? It was someone that ended up at the restaurant, down in the hotel, sitting right beside me that night, and I struck up a conversation, and that person was excited to hear about this idea of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, dude, there's leadership there in the sense that God intended for me to bring a message to someone that didn't have it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know what your leadership is going to be, but the dangerous thing is to assume that you have none.
Yeah.
Then you're not prepared for it when it happens.
Yeah, that's really good.
Or to, I thought of like, it's really easy when you have, bad leadership or bad, whatever you want to say, bad management, to fall into, this cycle of just complaining. And then what usually happens, I think, I've
I'll probably complain to you today about my job.
But we all fall prey to this, not just complaining, but you start kind of, okay, well, I have a bad manager. They're not doing their job. It's making my job harder. So then you just start slacking.
Yep.
It's usually slowly you start slacking. And instead of like, well, the form of leadership there would be to realize like, okay, ultimately you're not working just for that manager.
That's right.
You are to an extent, you're to
Whatever
respect
you
him
do,
no matter
do it as if unto the Lord.
Unto the Lord. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's like, and to realize that and say, okay, well, a good leader, and I'm over this task, I'm leading this task, whatever it may be, is to do it unto the Lord, to the best of my ability.
That's right.
And a lot of times what people don't realize is that will show through in a sense of you'll doing a good job, even with a bad manager who's messing things up. You'll be the one that shines through of going when people realize it. And I've experienced this, even not personally, like, oh, I did a great job. Both cases of where I've had bad management and I kind of just gave up.
Yep.
I'm like, well, whatever. Bad management. I can't get anything done. I can't do. So why do I care? It's like, but also the other way of, okay, well, I'm going to work hard no matter what. And then seeing where it's like, okay, well, then people start realizing, their bosses start realizing, well, they're doing the right thing. You failed.
Yeah.
And it starts showing, okay, well, he's taking responsibility. He's taking ownership. And, the whole time you were talking, all I could think of is, have you ever read Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership?
No, I have not.
You would love it. So
I need to read it.
And I would recommend even to, if anyone's listening, Jocko, I don't know if he's a Christian or not and stuff. There's not necessarily any Christian stuff in the book, but he's
common grace stuff. Still exists.
He was a Navy SEAL.
Called? It's called
Extreme Ownership.
Extreme Ownership. Oh, that's good. Ownership is
and his the whole book is pretty much what you just talked about with your squadron leader or whatever. What was his name you just mentioned?
Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like Jocko.
Yeah.
It sounds like what Jocko talks about, what he taught his men, how he handled situations in Ramadi, and just going through of saying, ultimately it's on, as a leader, you take responsibility for the men under you. You take responsibility, you take ownership over even their mistakes of saying, well, I should have trained them better, or I should have, and it is. And ultimately when you read this book, I remember reading it and coming away from it like, and just listening, I've listened to this podcast for years of, there is a lot of common grace, Christ-like leadership things that you can take and apply to your own life.
One of the most interesting concepts about what you just said is this idea that you're doing it not out of a sense of trying to get all the credit, but because you have ownership over your position, whatever it is, ditch digger or millionaire business owner, right? Mm-hmm. I don't care what your position is. If you realize that your obligation is to the Lord, you have an opportunity and an obligation to do your job well.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you also don't do it so that you can get the credit. And this plays out in the home a lot more, as much as the workplace, right? I mean, we find as men that we are motivated to do something when we think we're going to be rewarded for it. That is still the case. I mean, I'm always, obviously, if I think
go
there's
to work
a bonus,
to get paid.
Yeah, I'm not working for free. I'm not flying them airplanes for nothing. But at the end of the day, the reality is I could do it with excellence, or I could kind of mail it in. I could slack. And the question is, what about those times when you have a boss who's pressing down on you, and you realize he's a slacker, he has no character, he has no discipline, he's a bad leader, and he's going to suck all the credit. He's absolutely going to get promoted instead of you. Do you still do a good job?
Yeah.
Do you? You should.
Yeah.
You should.
It's hard to.
But remember, God knows the balance.
That's right.
Yeah.
He knows what's up. And this is the part where being a servant is so essential to being a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership, biblical leadership, is sacrificial.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no other way about it. Like, you will not find leadership that's not sacrificial. That's the thing, though, is that's probably, I think that it's interesting what you said is, like, although that book's not a quote unquote Christian book,
Sure.
It's interesting that there's common grace things there. And if anything's true about leadership, and it's true things said about leadership, well, yeah, it's going to reflect the character of Christ.
Yeah.
For sure. So it's like,
that's the
Right.
the idea of, for anybody wondering, the idea of the podcast is saying, hey, not man enough,
right.
is the idea of, hey, we're not enough. Christ is the ultimate example of
none of us add up to that.
We don't add up to it.
But we strive to it. And I do absolutely agree with that. The hopeful kind of closing out on this segment on leadership, I'll give you at least one story here of recent. This happened this week. Awesome. in the office. I sit Foxtrot, which is like an operations superintendent. So we launch and recover air crews. We answer radios. We kind of exist as the sign-off authority for risk. So if there's bad weather out there, or if you have a bunch of fatigue, things like that, we kind of monitor the air crew, and the buck stops with us, essentially. We're the delegated authority for the group commander. And so you have to have someone like that anytime you've got airplanes flying. And so I was sitting in Foxtrot, and we had a senior master sergeant come into the office. We have another guy in there sitting there answering radios and doing computer stuff. And really, they do all the work, and I'm just kind of like the figurehead, if we're being honest. But this other senior master sergeant comes in because he's trying to get an exposure to all the different offices. And while he's sitting there, he's learning the job, which he came in, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. This guy's being a great leader right now. He's learning his people's jobs. I was really excited by this. And it was like, I haven't seen a senior enlisted guy do this in a while. This is really cool. And while he's there, he's having trouble with the computer and stuff like that, and he starts dropping blasphemous language, GD this, et cetera. The first time he does it, I'm sitting behind him, and I say out loud, I said, hey, that's not necessary. And he goes, oh, okay, my bad. He does it again. And I know I outrank the guy. I understand that I am in a position of positional leadership. I can stop him as an officer and say, you're not going to do that anymore in my office, et cetera. But what I basically said was, hey, that's really unnecessary. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
And he doubles down on it. It was remarkable. He was like, well, everybody uses language, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, hang on. Do I come into your office and blaspheme the name of your God? You can see him really quickly realizing that he's fighting a losing battle, right? But it was one of those things where the other enlisted troop in the office could easily have corrected him as well, and didn't. It was up to me to be a leader in that sense, to set the tone and environment and put a standard there of behavior, if you will, with a troop that had been in the unit a lot longer than me. He's a senior enlisted guy. He's been around for a long time. Now, it was easier for me to do it because of my rank, but I'll tell you this, as a guy, it's not easy to sit there and correct someone else.
No.
It doesn't matter what your rank is.
Yeah.
It takes, and I wasn't super comfortable doing it. I had never really had to step in and say, you got to remember, I haven't held these convictions for all that long.
Right.
Yeah. So I found myself going, look, and I even told him, I said, look, I'm not perfect. I'm not expecting you to be perfect.
Right.
But I do think that's a reasonable standard by which we'll behave. And he doubled down. He tried to convince me that that was okay, et cetera, and I had to set him straight.
Yeah.
But I do think there are times when we have opportunities for leadership that extend beyond the you need to do this for the mission effectiveness of the unit, or you need to do this so that we can save the company X number of dollars, or you need to do this because this is the way they taught us to do it. It's like, hold on, this doesn't really fit into any of those molds. This is behavior.
Yeah.
This is a standard of leadership where you just bridge the gap into Christianity, into my spiritual life.
Yeah.
How do we lead in areas that are kind of dicey like that? Because his argument was, we're not allowed to have religious discussions at work. I said, well, then why do we have chaplains?
Yeah.
He was like, well, but we're not supposed to. And I was like, hey,
then why are you bringing up God's name?
It was a really quick connection. I said, I tend to agree with you, by the way. We do have religious discussions at work, but here's the deal. One thing I do know for sure is that if you are going to be, and I had a leadership discussion with the guy.
Yeah.
You've been around a long time. You're going to be leading a lot of men here. Do you think that you'll have good leadership or bad leadership if you offend the name of their God? Do you think that most people here are people of faith? He said, yeah, probably. I said, I tend to agree. I said, I know that's my personal standard. Mm-hmm. I'm not applying an unreasonable standard to you based
You're
on
not
my
expecting
faith.
him to be like a believer fully.
Because he said, well, what other words do you not want me to say? I said, look, man, I'm not going to get on your case about much. But I said, I think it's a pretty reasonable and clear expectation that I'm setting for you, that we won't have blasphemy here. But you never know what your leadership will come out to be. It might be that he goes home, because you know what? After that, it worked itself into a conversation about God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How funny is that? Now, do I think I won him to the Lord? No, I don't think so.
Right.
But I do think that made him think a little bit.
Yeah.
And I hope that it did. I hope that's my prayer for the guy. My hope in the discussion about leadership in this forum is that whether you find yourself in a positional form of leadership, which most of the guys, by the way, they may be starting careers now. They may be mid-career. We have a lot of guys that are kind of maybe 5 years in our church right now in their so-called career, their workplace environment. And there's some that we know and love that are well established in their jobs, maybe even owners or whatever. But you also have a ton of young guys that are just hoping to find jobs or just getting started in their jobs. All of them at some point in the next 15 or 20 years are going to be in positional places of leadership.
Yeah.
But do they realize that until they're still in spiritual places of leadership?
Yeah.
That's the key. And then my encouragement to those guys is prepare accordingly. You might have a brief conversation as you go in to serve. Let's say you're a driver and you're going to go in and serve a company. You might have a brief moment of leadership as you greet the secretary in that building.
Yeah.
Or the person who's receiving or giving whatever the good or service that's being exchanged. It might be brief, but it's still leadership. And you may do it again and again. You might do it next week and the following week and the following week. That leadership is compounding. That can be really scary. If you're a terrible leader, then they're gonna get to know you real well, and they're gonna be the people who are, oh man, I can't. This is the day that this guy comes. They're gonna, you know what I mean.
You're leading them to despair, to have to deal with you.
I'm always hoping that the people in the room aren't like, oh no, it's Tim.
It's interesting because it's like you're going to have some type of impression on people.
Yeah.
And that impression's either going to lead them into a certain state.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, what is that? Is it
you encouraging? Are you excellent at your job? Are you taking an interest in them? It might be that in just a 5-minute engagement, you have a chance to ask that person what's going on in their life. And here's an interesting one. This is a tip or trick. And in the Air Force, we call these TTPs, right? Tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is not a procedure, okay? This is a technique. But I often am stuck in airports and then hotels at nighttime at the airlines. I'm generally speaking, if the captain doesn't come down, I'm usually eating alone at night. And I'm sitting in the hotel restaurant, and I'm eating my $20 hamburger or whatever it is, and the only person I interact with is the waitress, right? And it's usually some older lady who's on her third job and has, you know what I'm saying? Like that's typically what it is. And this is something I've learned, especially because usually the restaurants are empty. I'll look at that lady when she comes by and she's pouring me more water or whatever it is, or bring the bill or whatever. I'll say, hey, I'm just curious. I really appreciate you, serving me tonight. And I know there's not a lot of business going on here. I'm just curious. Is there any way I can be praying for you? Man, you will not believe the responses you get from a person who doesn't see that coming, first of all. And I have never to the day had one of those people go, no, nothing. Every single one of them is virtually pulling up a chair to tell me how I'm unloading on you. Okay, I'm telling you, like
you're almost like, hey, I don't need to know that.
Yeah. They're like, oh no, you won't believe my daughter. She's having surgery tomorrow. I'm really worried about it, etc. I'm going to miss Christmas, etc. You have no idea. And here's the thing: it's a 5-second question that allows you. And then here's the other thing too: real leadership is not just in words. You do pray for the person.
Yes,
but here's the crazy thing. What if I go back to Albuquerque in 3 weeks and I put that person's name in my phone with that simple prayer request? And I did spend some time in prayer for that person. What happens in 3 weeks when I go back there and guess who's working that night?
Right.
Same person, old Tina or whoever. And I go, Tina. Hey, I'm curious. There's a lady in Memphis, Tennessee at the IHOP right by where I charge the car on the way to Nashville that I have gotten to know over the course of months. I know that her husband was former military and is suffering from PTSD, and she's got some family trouble, and he's got some trouble, and it's just life has been hard on them. And I've got some of the prayer requests written down on my phone. I see her. I will say, how's your husband doing, etc. You don't understand. People are like, who is this?
Yeah.
And then you may have the opportunity, not to get the glory for yourself. You may have the opportunity when they ask to tell them why you care.
Yeah,
because you care for their souls.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. And I think one thing that I would like to point out is it takes a lot of the stuff that you're saying, like dealing with the guy in the office, doing those type of things. It takes courage. Because we don't want to always, and I've always had an issue of like, it seems like I'm getting better recently, but of dealing with confrontation. I'd rather just ignore
hard.
It. Yeah. And
that one
and
I had this week was really uncomfortable for me.
Yes. And I would say this: if someone is going to unlike you, like not like you for some reason, make sure it's for the right reason.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. Maybe somebody doesn't like, oh, well, I try to do what's right and people still like, there's this person that still doesn't like me. Well, you know what? Still be kind to them.
Yeah.
Still do the things that you can do, but maybe they just don't like you because you do have a smile on your face every day.
Could be that.
I mean, could be.
Or if you're being honest with yourself, it might be because you're lazy.
Yeah.
It might be because your quality of work is poor. It might be because you do such a bad job at your job that you're causing them work.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of other possibilities too. It's like, like you said, make sure that if they reject you, make sure they reject you for the right reason.
That's right. Because the truth is we will, I mean, this is biblical. We will be hated by the world.
Sure.
To one degree or another. Yeah. But I do think that there's a lot.
But you're not taking a highway to that. I mean,
we're not going for it.
Live peaceably with everyone you can.
That's just part of it. Like, we don't have to ask for that. My goodness.
Yeah.
I think that the Bible actually says to strive for peace. Instead.
Right.
And so anyway,
just add one more good thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, I got something.
James 1:5. If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach.
Yep.
And it will be given him. This is a important aspect of leadership.
That's right.
If you think you're a wise leader, you're not.
Yeah, if you think that, it shows your lack of wisdom.
And I know the most humble men I look up to as leaders are also infinitely more aware of their fallibility and seek wisdom more than I do.
Yeah.
And I respect them for their humility. And I really respect them because in the process of seeking wisdom, God is granting them wisdom. Okay. And that's one of the things that makes them a better leader.
That's good.
So how do you know that you lack wisdom? I just told you did, and the Bible is pretty clear about it. You lack wisdom. So you need to seek it. And I need to seek it. It's not just you, it's me too. And that is, you have to be humble enough to realize that you need it. Yeah. And then you need to act on that, and that is by asking God for it.
That's good.
And that is a wonderful attribute to have as a leader. It's also a requirement.
Yeah. I have just a thought of going off of kind of what you just said through this past little bit of you're talking about, the courage to stand up in the workplace.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking of, and I think y'all could relate to this too, of the courage to do that in the home, take charge and take leadership in the home is, it's that's hard. And I think it all this applies to that as well as husbands and fathers.
I think that, man.
Yeah.
We had people over the other night, twice. This happened last week. And they came, we ate dinner, we played some apples to apples type games, stuff like that, and they left.
Yeah, he told me about that.
And which is great. And you know what? At the end of it, I was doing dishes and I'm looking at MP and I was like, I said, MP, we didn't include them in family worship. And she looked at me, she's like, yeah, I was thinking about that. And I was like, man. And I almost wanted to be like, how come you didn't say anything? No, it's not her fault. It's not her job.
Yeah.
It's my job as a failed leadership moment. And so, to say we always have room to grow in these areas of leadership, especially in the home. There will be anyone who's married already knows this is the reality. Anyone who's not married is going to find out. So, we need leadership in the home.
We maybe that's a separate episode.
For sure.
Talking about it in the home, but I will say this: it does take. You're definitely going against the grain in our culture and in this day, taking leadership in your home as a man. Feminism is huge. We heard that in our last sermon this past day, and it actually causes great harm. But it's because men have been weak.
It is.
It's because men have allowed it to take over, and they just chose to. You know what? The pathway of least resistance is best for me, and it's like that's what God is here. Mm-hmm. And the truth is no, if you love your wife, you'll lead. Yeah. If you love your family, you'll lead. And man,
if you love your neighbor, you'll lead. That's where the workplace comes in.
I agree.
I think. Go ahead.
Sorry. I wasn't trying to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying one of my last thoughts was also just kind of a summary of everything that was said is thinking of you were talking about witnessing to these people or talking. It's like, well, poor leadership or poor work ethic, all those things greatly harm your testimony.
That's right. Absolutely. You guys remember when you were asking me, this is the last podcast, it was a year and a half ago, you're asking, how do you do your job well? I have to be able to land the airplane well. Yeah. There is some aspect to being competent at your job. Whatever you do it as if unto the Lord. Mm-hmm. I think that is an important aspect of leadership, no doubt about it.
And you think of the guy that comes in the room and he's always complaining, always negative, whatever it is. Yeah. It's like we all work with those people who are just not fun to be around, right. and just always picking everything. And then it's like, okay, and they turn around and start trying to tell you about, the gospel or something like that. It's like immediately everybody in the room is like, who's this guy?
There was one time I stood up to a guy. He had a group text with a lot of the other guys, and he was sitting there saying he was taking up for one of the bad things that he was doing out on the route. And he said, well, and he tried to bring a testimony, like bringing up, God. Yeah. And I actually texted back in the group text. I said, please don't blame your incompetence on God. He has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. That's harsh, but maybe true. Yeah.
I'm not saying I was right, but it did start a conversation with him. But I was like, well, man, if you're going to blast it on the... anyway.
Be humble.
Yeah.
Be credible.
Yes.
That is in your spiritual disciplines and your knowledge of the word, but also be approachable.
Yes.
This is an idea, and by the way, that is the mantra of the weapons school in the Air Force: humble, credible, approachable. It's an interesting thing that they understand that if an arrogant person, it doesn't matter how much you know if people think you're a jerk.
That's right.
All right. What about credibility? If you're not a good example, that is an attitude and in your technical skills, whatever your job is. I don't care if you're digging ditches or flying airplanes. And then be approachable, and that is you have to love people.
That's right.
That's real important.
Yeah.
Now, I enjoyed talking about that, and it's near and dear to my life on a daily basis. But the thing is, I suspect that it really will be near and dear to any Christian man's life.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, thanks, man. I think we got to wrap this up, but that's fantastic. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you on again because this is
a lot
great.
of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and join us again.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Comment, subscribe, and hey, I just want to throw this out there. If you're just discovering this episode and you haven't, I would encourage you to maybe go, especially during the holiday season and stuff like that. If there's any kind of suffering that you're going through or anything like that, any hard trials that you're going through, I would recommend going and listening to our previous episode
with Danny Thursby.
Yes, it was. Man, I would send you there because his testimony is fantastic, and maybe that could help. But anyway, join us next time. Have a good one.